Hello and welcome. You're welcome to comment your city and the time below. I always enjoy reading them. If you find these stories interesting, please consider subscribing. Let's start tonight's story. I took the job because I needed money and couldn't afford to be picky anymore. The posting said remote border checkpoint, night shift, overtime available, quiet work environment. It sounded perfect for someone trying to rebuild their savings after a bad year. No traffic jams, no office politics. Just me, a booth, and the occasional traveler passing through in the dead of night. The checkpoint sits at the edge of nowhere, wedged between dense pine forest on one side and open scrubland on the other. There's one cracked two-lane road cutting through the landscape like a scar, one massive floodlight mast that hums constantly, and a small trailer that serves as the office. The trailer smells like old coffee, stale air, and something faintly metallic I couldn't quite place. The kind of smell that settles into your clothes and stays there. I arrived just before sunset on my first day. The supervisor, a man named Carl, met me outside. He looked like he'd been working nights for decades. Deep lines around his eyes, graying stubble, and a voice like gravel being ground underfoot. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You're the new night guard," he said, not a question. "Come on, I'll show you the setup before I leave." The tour was brief and mechanical. He pointed out the gate arm, which looked older than I was, painted in faded yellow and white stripes. The camera feeds displayed on two grainy monitors inside the booth, one covering the approach lane, the other aimed at the holding area behind the checkpoint. There was a waiting lane for vehicles that needed secondary inspection, a small holding room with a metal bench and a single fluorescent light, and the booth itself, a cramped space with bulletproof glass, a microphone system, and a chair that had seen better days. "Radio works most of the time," Carl said, tapping the console. "Signal gets weird out here, fades in and out. Don't worry about it too much. If you need help, call. Someone will hear you eventually." I nodded, trying to absorb everything. It seemed straightforward enough. Check IDs, wave people through, log vehicles, and handle the occasional paperwork issue. I'd worked retail before. This had to be easier than dealing with angry customers over expired coupons. Carl paused at the door before leaving, then turned back and picked up a clipboard from the desk. Attached to it was a laminated sheet, the edges worn smooth from handling, the text printed in bold, blocky letters. "Almost forgot," he said, handing it to me. "Night rules. Read them out loud once, then read them again silently." I glanced at the sheet. The title read, "Night Rules. Read carefully." "Is this serious?" I asked, scanning the list. Some of the rules seemed bizarre, almost like jokes. Carl's expression didn't change. "Read them out loud, then read them again. That's how everyone starts." I cleared my throat and began reading, feeling slightly ridiculous. "If a vehicle stops exactly on the white line, do not step outside. If someone asks you to confirm the date, do not answer. If the floodlights flicker 3 times, look at the floor until the buzzing stops. If you hear a second radio transmission under your own voice, stop talking immediately. If someone begs you to open the door, ask them to step back so you can see their hands. If they refuse, do not speak again. If a person approaches on foot and does not cast a shadow, do not shine a light on them." There were more, each stranger than the last. I looked up at Carl, expecting him to crack a smile to tell me it was hazing, some kind of tradition to scare the new hire. He didn't smile. His eyes were flat, tired, and very serious. "Is this a joke?" I asked, "like to mess with new people?" "No," Carl said simply. "This place doesn't care if you believe. It just cares if you follow the rules." "But what do they even mean? If a vehicle stops on the white line, that's just a line on the pavement." "Read them again," Carl said. Silently this time. Let them sit in your head. You'll understand when you need to. He left before I could ask more questions. The door closed behind him with a hollow metal sound, and then it was just me, the hum of the floodlight, and the laminated sheet in my hands. I read the rules again, slower this time, trying to make sense of them. They felt like superstitions, the kind of thing people invent to explain coincidences. Don't walk under ladders. Don't break mirrors. Don't step outside if a truck stops on the white line. I set the clipboard down and looked out through the bulletproof glass. The checkpoint stretched out before me, illuminated in harsh white light. The road ran straight in both directions, disappearing into darkness beyond the reach of the floodlight. The pine trees on the left formed a solid black wall. The scrubland on the right was empty and gray, dotted with low brush that barely moved in the wind. There were no tourists here. Carl had mentioned that during the tour. Only truckers making long hauls, hunters heading into the backwoods, and the occasional lost family who followed bad GPS directions and ended up at the edge of the map. I settled into the chair and tested the radio. Static crackled. Then a voice came through, distant and distorted. Checkpoint 7, radio check. I pressed the transmit button. Checkpoint 7, copy. This is the new night guard, first shift. The voice on the other end paused, and for a moment I thought I heard something underneath it, a faint echo like someone breathing on the line. Copy that. Welcome aboard. Stay sharp. The radio clicked off. Silence returned, thick and heavy. I glanced at the laminated sheet again, at the rule about hearing a second transmission under your own voice. Stop being paranoid, I muttered to myself. It's just a quiet job. That's all. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and the darkness outside became absolute, I couldn't shake the feeling that the checkpoint was watching me. That the rules weren't jokes. That Carl had left something very important unsaid. I read the rules one more time, whispering them under my breath like a prayer, and waited for the first vehicle to arrive. The first hours passed in a stillness so complete it felt unnatural. No cars, no lights on the horizon, just wind moving through the trees, the distant sound of dogs barking somewhere far off, and a moth tapping persistently against the outside of the glass drawn to the light inside the booth. I tried to relax. I thumbed through the logbook, noting that the last entry was from 3 nights ago, written in Carl's blocky handwriting. Aero 347, pickup truck, Idaho plates, waved through, no issues. The entries before that were similarly brief and unremarkable. It seemed like a quiet post, easy money. Around 1 in the morning, I saw headlights in the distance. They moved slowly, deliberately, growing brighter as the vehicle approached. I sat up straighter, suddenly aware of how isolated I was, how far from any help. The truck came into view. A large semi-dark paint, no company logos visible. It rolled forward at a crawl, engine rumbling low. And then it stopped, exactly on the white line. I stared at it, my hand halfway to the door handle, ready to step outside and do the usual inspection. Then the rule flashed in my mind, clear and sharp. If a vehicle stops exactly on the white line, do not step outside. I froze. The truck sat there, engine idling. But the sound was wrong. It should have been loud, a deep diesel growl. Instead, it sounded distant, muffled, like it was coming from the other side of a thick wall. The cabin was dark, no dome light, no silhouette of a driver. I pressed the intercom button, my voice sounding too loud in the quiet booth. Please pull forward to the inspection area. Nothing happened. The truck didn't move. The engine continued its strange, faraway rumble. Then over the speaker system mounted outside, I heard a voice. Calm, polite, almost friendly. Can you come here a second? My heart kicked in my chest. I glanced at the monitors. The camera showed the truck clearly, stopped on the line, but the angle didn't let me see into the cabin. I pressed the intercom again. "Sir, please pull forward. I'll speak with you at the inspection window." A pause. Then the driver's side window began to lower, the glass sliding down smoothly. No face appeared. Just darkness inside the cabin. Deep, absolute darkness, the kind that shouldn't exist with a floodlight massed 20 feet away. The voice came again. Slightly different this time, like a recording being played back through water. "Come here a second." I didn't move. My hand was still on the door handle, but I didn't pull it. The rule held me in place like a physical barrier. "Sir, I need you to pull forward. I can't process you from this position." The darkness inside the cabin shifted. I thought I saw movement, something slow and deliberate, but I couldn't make out any shape. The truck began to roll forward on its own. The engine sound didn't change. There was no lurch, no sign of gears engaging. It just glided forward, smooth and silent, as if it were being pulled by invisible hands. I watched, my breath caught in my throat as the truck moved through the checkpoint lane. The gate arm was still down, the barrier was clearly in place. But the truck passed beneath it without slowing, without touching it, as if the metal arm didn't exist. I lunged for the camera monitor, switching views to the rear camera that covered the exit road. The screen showed an empty road, no truck, no taillights, nothing. I switched back to the front camera. The lane was empty. The white line sat undisturbed in the pool of floodlight, as if no vehicle had been there at all. But I could still smell diesel exhaust, faint and acrid, drifting through the air vents. I sat back down, slowly, my hands shaking. The laminated sheet sat on the desk in front of me, the rules printed in their bold, matter-of-fact text. I picked it up and read the first rule again. If a vehicle stops exactly on the white line, do not step outside. It didn't explain why. It didn't say what would happen if you did. It just said don't. And I had followed it. I tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Maybe the camera had glitched. Maybe the truck had pulled forward and I'd missed it in the moment of confusion. Maybe the gate arm had malfunctioned, rising just enough to let the truck pass without me noticing. But I knew those explanations were lies I was telling myself. The truck had stopped exactly on the line, measured and precise. The voice had been wrong. The darkness in the cabin had been too deep, and the truck had passed through a solid barrier as if the physical world was negotiable. I thought about Carl's face, the flatness in his eyes when he'd handed me the rules. The way he'd said, "This place doesn't care if you believe." I understood now. The rules weren't for criminals. They weren't about checking IDs or catching smugglers. They were for something else. Something that used the checkpoint like a doorway, testing the edges, waiting for someone to make a mistake. I looked at the logbook, at all the brief, unremarkable entries. How many of those nights had been like this? How many times had Carl sat in this booth following the rules, watching things that shouldn't exist? I picked up the radio, suddenly desperate to hear another human voice. Checkpoint 7 to dispatch. I just had a vehicle that... I stopped. What was I going to say? That a truck had driven through a solid gate? That the driver's cabin was full of impossible darkness? I released the transmit button. The radio crackled with static, then fell silent. I sat in the booth, staring out at the empty road, at the white line glowing under the floodlight, and felt the first crack in my understanding of reality. The rules were real. The threat was real. And I had 8 more hours until dawn. I wasn't alone for the whole night. Around 3 in the morning, another vehicle pulled up, a dusty patrol car with county markings. A young officer climbed out, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of swagger that comes from not having worked a place long enough to learn its dangers. His name was Tyler. He'd been assigned to rotate through the checkpoint once a week, part of some interagency cooperation program. He strolled into the booth, chewing gum, his boots loud on the metal steps. "New guy?" he asked, not waiting for an answer. Yeah, Carl mentioned someone was starting. How's it going? Quiet? Yeah, I said. Quiet. He snorted. It's always quiet. That's the whole problem with this post. Boring as hell. I keep telling my sergeant it's a waste of resources, but they don't listen. He glanced at the laminated sheet on the desk, still sitting where I'd left it. Oh man, they gave you the list, the famous night rules. He picked it up, grinning. This thing is such bullshit. Old-timers made it up to mess with people. Don't step outside if a truck stops on the line. It's just a line, dude. Don't confirm the date. Like what, the calendar's gonna attack you? I didn't respond. I wanted to tell him what I'd seen earlier, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he was talking, so confident, so dismissive. Or maybe it was the part of me that still wanted to believe he was right, that it was all superstition. Tyler tossed the sheet back on the desk. Best way to survive this job? Don't feed the myth. Do your job, process people, and go home. That's it. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a while. He scrolled through his phone, occasionally making comments about how bad the cell signal was. I kept my eyes on the road, watching the darkness beyond the floodlight. Then the headlights appeared. A sedan this time, an older model with a dented bumper. It pulled up to the checkpoint at a normal distance, engine running smoothly. Two people inside, a man driving, a woman in the passenger seat. Tyler stood up. Finally, some action. Let me handle this. You can watch and learn. He stepped outside before I could say anything. I watched through the glass as he approached the driver's side window, hands on his belt, casual and relaxed. The driver rolled down the window. He was middle-aged, plain-looking, and wearing a jacket that had seen better days. The woman leaned over slightly, smiling. Her voice carried through the open window, friendly and normal. Evening, officer. We're just passing through. Is there a problem? No problem, Tyler said. Just a routine check. Routine? License and registration, please. The man handed over the documents. Tyler examined them with a flashlight, nodding. The woman spoke again, still smiling. What day is it again? We've been driving for so long we kind of lost track. I went rigid in my seat. The rule: if someone asks you to confirm the date, do not answer. Tyler laughed. I know the feeling. Long drives will do that. It's Friday. Well, technically Saturday now, September 23rd. The woman's smile widened. Thank you. That's very helpful. The man nodded, taking back his documents. Appreciate it, officer. Tyler waved them through. The sedan rolled forward slowly, disappearing into the darkness beyond the checkpoint. He walked back to the booth, grinning. See? Normal people. Normal questions. Nothing weird. You've just got to treat this like any other job. But I was staring at him, at the change in his face that he hadn't noticed yet. Tyler, I said quietly. What did you just tell them? He blinked. What? What day did you tell them? He frowned, his confidence flickering. It's Friday. No, wait, Saturday. It's Saturday, September. He trailed off, his expression going blank. What day is it? You don't remember? I just said it. I literally just said it. His voice rose slightly, frustration creeping in. It's... The floodlights flickered once. Tyler's face went pale. The lights flickered again. Shit, he whispered. The lights flickered a third time, and a high-pitched buzzing filled the air, sharp and painful. I looked down at the floor, following the rule, my heart hammering. I heard Tyler moving, his boots scraping on the pavement outside, but I didn't look up. The buzzing intensified, vibrating in my teeth, in my skull. It felt like something was pressing down on the booth, on the entire checkpoint, testing its boundaries. Then it stopped. I waited, counting to 10, then slowly raised my eyes. Tyler was standing outside the booth, staring down the road where the sedan had gone. His face was slack, his eyes unfocused. I opened the door carefully. "Tyler, you okay?" He didn't respond. His lips were moving, but no sound came out at first. Then I heard it, soft and rhythmic like a chant. September 23rd, September 23rd, September 23rd. "Tyler, stop!" September 23rd, September 23rd. He said it over and over, his voice flat and mechanical, as if the date was the only thing anchoring him to reality. As if forgetting it would mean forgetting himself. I grabbed his arm. "Tyler, look at me." He turned slowly, his eyes focusing on my face. For a moment, recognition flickered there. "What day is it?" he asked, his voice small and frightened. I almost answered. The words were right there, ready to come out. But I stopped myself, remembering the rule, understanding now what it meant. "I can't tell you that," I said. His face crumpled. "Why not? Why can't you tell me?" "Because you already answered them. You gave them what they wanted." He stared at me, uncomprehending, then looked back down the dark road. What did I do? I didn't have an answer, not one that would help. Tyler stood there for the rest of the shift, leaning against the side of the booth, whispering the date under his breath like a prayer. He couldn't stop. Every time he tried, the panic would rise in his eyes and he'd start again, faster, more desperate. When dawn finally came and Carl arrived to relieve me, Tyler was still muttering. Carl took one look at him and sighed, a deep, weary sound. "Which rule?" he asked me. He confirmed the date, I said quietly. Carl nodded as he'd expected it. "They'll send someone to pick him up. He'll be okay in a few days, mostly." "Mostly?" Carl didn't elaborate. He just put a hand on Tyler's shoulder and guided him toward the patrol car. I watched them go, my stomach churning. The rules weren't about protecting the checkpoint. They were about protecting us. And breaking them didn't mean immediate death or violence. It meant contamination, rewriting, becoming something less than you were. I looked down at the laminated sheet in my hands, at the rules I'd dismissed as jokes just hours ago. I wasn't dismissing them anymore. I couldn't sleep after my first shift. I went home, tried to lie down, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw the truck on the white line, the darkness inside the cabin, Tyler's blank face repeating the date like a broken record. I needed answers. The next night I arrived early. Carl was still there, finishing paperwork. He glanced up when I walked in, his expression unreadable. "You came back," he said. "Was there a chance I wouldn't?" He shrugged. "Some people don't. They work one night, see something they can't explain, and never show up again. We don't chase them. This job isn't for everyone." I wanted to ask him about Tyler, about what had really happened, but Carl's closed-off demeanor made it clear he wasn't going to volunteer information. After he left, I started searching the trailer. There wasn't much. A desk, a filing cabinet, a small kitchenette with a coffee maker that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. I opened the filing cabinet, expecting it to be locked, but it slid open easily. Inside were rows of hanging folders, most labeled with years and months. I pulled out the one marked for the current year and flipped it open. Incident reports, dozens of them. They were written in the same careful bureaucratic language you'd find in any government document, but the content was anything but ordinary. August 12th, 0243 hours. The vehicle approached the checkpoint, stopped 3 meters before the gate. The driver exited without being prompted. The guard on duty, J. Kellerman, requested the driver return to the vehicle. The driver asked the guard to confirm what he was seeing. The guard declined to respond. The driver returned to the vehicle after 9 minutes. Vehicle departed. No further incident. Note: Guard Kellerman transferred to the day shift per his request. I read it again, trying to parse the meaning behind the clinical language. The guard had been asked to confirm something, and he'd refused, following the rules. But something about the encounter had been bad enough to make him request a transfer. I flipped through more pages. July 3rd, 01:56 hours. Subject attempted to enter the holding room without processing. The subject did not respond to verbal commands. The subject stood at the door for 43 minutes without movement. Camera review shows no visible breathing. The subject departed when floodlights were activated manually. No plates recorded. June 19th, 03:28 hours. Guard on duty M. Reeves reported hearing a radio transmission in her own voice. The guard ceased speaking per protocol. Transmission continued for 6 minutes, providing personal information not on file. The recording equipment malfunctioned. No audio recovered. Note: Guard Reeves completed a psychological evaluation. Cleared for continued duty. Every few pages, the same phrase appeared, always in the same place, always in bold. Subject attempted to be acknowledged. I found an older binder, the cover worn and water-stained, dated 5 years ago. The entries were sparser, but the incidents were worse. March 17th, guard on duty, A. Morrison, engaged in extended conversation with traveler. Guard confirmed date, time, and personal details in an attempt to be helpful. The guard exhibited confusion approximately 40 minutes after the interaction. By the end of the shift, Guard Morrison was unable to recall the spouse's name or home address. Medical evaluation inconclusive. Guard placed on indefinite leave. I felt my skin crawl. That's what had started happening to Tyler. He'd given them the date, and now he couldn't stop repeating it, like it was the only piece of himself he could hold on to. I kept reading, going further back. November 8th. Camera footage shows an individual standing at the checkpoint gate for 1 hour and 22 minutes. The individual did not move despite wind conditions, 15 to 20 mph. Grass and brush around the individual are clearly affected by wind. The individual remained stationary. Guard on duty P. Santos did not engage. Individual departed at 04:31 hours when approached by the scheduled relief supervisor. Another page, this one with a handwritten note in the margin. Don't ask them questions. Don't confirm anything. They need permission. I sat back, my mind racing. The checkpoint wasn't just a border crossing. It was a boundary line that something used, something that existed in the spaces between definitions. It couldn't force its way through. It needed to be processed, acknowledged, and confirmed. The rules weren't arbitrary. They were a defense mechanism, a way to refuse participation in whatever game the threat was playing. I pulled out another folder, older still, and found a map tucked inside. It showed the checkpoint and the surrounding area, but there were markings I didn't understand. Red circles, dates, handwritten notes. One note near the checkpoint read, "Line established 1967. Prior incidents unrecorded." Another further out in the forest, "Do not search this area after dark." And at the bottom of the map in faded pencil, "It's not trying to cross, it's trying to be invited." I heard a vehicle approaching and quickly shoved the folders back into the cabinet. A pickup truck rolled up to the checkpoint, normal and unremarkable. I processed the driver, a hunter heading into the backwoods, and waved him through without incident. But as I watched his taillights disappear, I thought about the logs, about all the guards who had worked here before me, all the incidents that had been carefully documented and filed away. This place had a history. A long, dark history of people encountering something that shouldn't exist. Something that tested them, probed them, tried to trick them into giving it what it needed. And the only thing keeping it at bay was a laminated sheet of rules that sounded like jokes. I looked out at the white line glowing under the floodlight. How many times had something stopped there, waiting to be acknowledged? How many guards had stood where I was standing, following the same rules, fighting the same fight? I picked up the radio, testing the connection. Static crackled, then cleared. "Checkpoint 7, radio check," a voice responded, distant and professional. "Copy, checkpoint 7, all clear." I set the radio down and pulled out the laminated sheet, reading the rules one more time. This wasn't just a job, it was a war of attrition. And I was the newest soldier. Around 4 in the morning, I heard a vehicle I recognized. The rumble of an old diesel engine, the crunch of tires on gravel. A battered SUV pulled up to the checkpoint and a man climbed out. He was older than Carl, maybe in his 60s, with the kind of weathered face that comes from years of night shifts and things that don't belong in official reports. He wore a faded uniform jacket and moved with the careful economy of someone who'd learned not to waste energy. I'd seen his name in the old incident reports. Santos. P. Santos. He'd been mentioned more than once, always in the context of handling situations that had gone sideways. He knocked on the booth door, 2 measured taps, and I let him in. "You're the new one," he said, not a question. "Carl said you made it through your first night. That's good. Are you here to check on me?" Santos shook his head. "I'm here to see if you're going to make it through the second. That's when most people break. First night, you're in shock. Second night, you start asking questions." He glanced at the filing cabinet. "I see you've been reading." I felt caught like a student called out in class. I needed to understand what this place is. "And do you?" I hesitated. I think the checkpoint is on some kind of boundary, not just between states or countries, between something else. Santos pulled out the other chair and sat down slowly as his joints hurt. "That's a good start. Better than most. You want the full explanation or just enough to keep you alive?" "Both." He smiled, a thin, humorless expression. "Fair enough. The checkpoint was built in 1967, right on a line that people used to call a lot of things. Thin place, crossing, border between the known and the other. Doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is that it's here and something on the other side noticed." "What is it?" "We don't know. No one's ever gotten a good look. It doesn't come through as you'd expect. It doesn't force anything. It's patient, intelligent, and it follows rules of its own that we don't fully understand." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "But we know one thing for certain. It can't cross on its own. It has to be processed. Processed. Like a traveler, like paperwork, it needs permission, acknowledgement. Someone has to confirm it's there, confirm it exists, confirm it has a right to pass through. Once you do that, you've invited it in." I thought about the truck on the white line, the voice asking me to come outside. And if I'd stepped out, if I'd gone to the truck, you'd be confirming you saw it, that it was real, that it had a reason to be there. Santos's eyes were dark and serious. "After that, it would have a claim on you. Not immediate, not violent, but piece by piece, you'd stop being yourself. You'd become a doorway." The word hung in the air between us, heavy and final. "Tyler," I said quietly. "The officer who told them the date. He can't stop repeating it now." Santos nodded. "He gave them a piece of information. Confirmed something they asked for. Now that piece of him belongs to them. He'll recover mostly, but he'll never be quite the same. He'll always feel like something is missing, like he forgot something important. And if he keeps working nights, if he comes back here, they'll ask for more. So the rules are designed to prevent processing. Don't confirm, don't acknowledge, don't answer questions, don't give them anything they can use." He pulled out a small notebook from his jacket pocket and flipped it open. "I've been working this checkpoint on and off for 30 years. I've seen good people break rules out of kindness, out of training, out of instinct, and I've watched what happens after." He tore out a page. from the notebook and handed it to me. Written in careful handwriting was a rule I hadn't seen on the laminated sheet. If a person approaches on foot and does not cast a shadow, do not shine a light on them. The light makes them real. That one's not official, Santos said, but it should be. I learned it the hard way. There are more like it, rules we've figured out over the years. The laminated sheet is just the basics. Why doesn't someone write them all down? Make a complete list? Because it changes. The threat adapts. It learns. You put up a rule and it finds a way around it. The best we can do is teach each other, guard to guard, shift to shift. He looked at me, his expression grave. This job isn't about catching liars or smugglers. It's about refusing to participate. Every night that thing tests the checkpoint. It sends vehicles, people, voices, anything it can use to get someone to confirm its existence. And every night, we say no. Thought about the logs I'd read, the guards who'd come before me, the careful documentation of refusals and near misses. How long can we keep saying no? Santos stood up, his joints creaking. As long as we have to. This checkpoint isn't going anywhere, and neither is what's on the other side. It's a stalemate. We hold the line. They keep testing it. That's the job. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If you ever feel like you're not sure what's real anymore, if you start doubting your own memory or your own name, get out. Don't finish the shift. Don't try to push through. Just leave. Better to abandon the post than to become part of what you're guarding against. Has that happened? Twice that I know of. Both times we found the guard still sitting in this booth answering questions for travelers that weren't there. He opened the door, letting in the cool night air. They were processing ghosts, waving through vehicles that didn't exist, filling out paperwork for something that was already inside. He left without another word, his SUV disappearing down the dark road. I sat alone in the booth, Santos's words echoing in my mind, refusing to participate. That's what this was, not a fight, not a defense. Just the simple, stubborn refusal to play along with something that needed our cooperation to exist. I looked at the new rule he'd given me, at the careful handwriting, and added it to my own mental list. The threat wasn't storming the gates, it was waiting for someone to open the door. And as long as I kept refusing, kept following the rules, it would have to keep waiting. I just hoped I was strong enough to keep saying no. The dead hours came around 3:30. That's what Santos had called them once in passing. The time when the world is at its quietest, when the distance between one moment and the next feels stretched thin. The time when your mind starts playing tricks, when every sound becomes amplified, when the darkness outside the floodlight seems to press against the glass like something alive. I'd been sitting in the booth for hours without incident, processing the occasional vehicle, a delivery truck, a late-night commuter, a couple in an RV who'd gotten turned around. Normal people, normal conversations. I was starting to think maybe tonight would be easy. Then I heard the banging. It came from outside the booth, fast and desperate, someone pounding on the outer door with an open palm. The sound was loud, panicked, urgent. "Help! Please, someone help me!" The voice was young, maybe teenage, cracking with fear. A boy. My hand went to the door handle instinctively, my training and basic human decency screaming at me to open it, to help. "Please, he's still out there. He's coming. Please let me in." I froze, my fingers on the handle, my heart hammering. The rule flashed in my mind. If someone begs you to open the door, ask them to step back so you can see their hands. If they refuse, do not speak again. But the voice sounded so real, so terrified. "Please, I'm just a kid. I got lost. Please don't leave me out here." I pressed the intercom button, my voice shaking. "Step back from the door. I need to see your hands." The banging stopped. For a moment there was silence. Then the voice came again, quieter now, pleading. I can't. He's right behind me. If I move, he'll see me. Please just open the door. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to help. This was a child, a scared, lost child who needed protection. What kind of monster would I be if I just sat there and did nothing? I looked at the monitors. The camera covering the entrance showed the door clearly, illuminated by the floodlight. There was no one there. The pavement was empty. But the voice was so close, so immediate, coming from just on the other side of the door. Please, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need you to step back where I can see you. Just take 2 steps back, then I can help you. Silence again, longer this time. Then the voice changed. The fear was gone, replaced by something else, something calm, almost amused. You're learning. I felt ice slide down my spine. The banging started again, but slower now, deliberate. 3 measured knocks, then a pause. 3 more knocks. I watched the monitor, still nothing. No one there. The intercom crackled. Can you see me now? I didn't answer. The rule was clear. If they refuse to step back, do not speak again. I know you're looking. I can feel it. I forced myself to stay silent, my hands gripping the edge of the desk. Then something pressed against the bulletproof glass. A hand. But it was wrong. The fingers were too long, the joints too numerous, bending in places that human fingers don't bend. The skin was pale, waxy, like something that had been underwater for too long. As it pressed against the glass, the fingers spread impossibly wide, the tips leaving wet streaks. I couldn't look away. The hand moved slowly, almost curiously, tracing patterns on the glass. I counted the fingers. 6, 7, 8, more appearing as it spread, as if the hand was unfolding. You're being rude, the voice said, now coming from directly in front of me, though the hand was the only thing visible. I only wanted to come inside. I'm so cold out here. I kept my eyes on the hand, on the wrong angles of it, fighting the urge to respond. Just say you can see me, that's all. 1 sentence, then I'll go away. The hand pressed harder against the glass. I heard a faint creaking sound, as if the material was being tested. I looked down at the floor, remembering another rule. If the floodlights flicker 3 times, look at the floor until the buzzing stops. This wasn't flickering lights, but the principle was the same. Don't watch. Don't engage. Don't acknowledge. I stared at the worn linoleum, at the scuff marks and coffee stains, and waited. The voice kept talking, cycling through different tones. It became the frightened teenager again, begging for help. Then it shifted to a woman's voice, angry, demanding to know why I wouldn't help her son. Then it became something else entirely, something without gender or emotion, reciting facts about my life that it shouldn't know. Your apartment is on the 3rd floor. You have a blue door. You forgot to lock it this morning. I kept staring at the floor. Your mother called 3 days ago. You didn't call her back. My hands were shaking. You're thinking about quitting. You think this job isn't worth it. I wasn't going to answer. I wasn't going to confirm anything. The wet streaks on the glass began to slide downward slowly, as if the hand was dragging itself away. I heard a soft scraping sound at the bottom of the door, like a fingernail tracing the gap where the door met the frame, searching for a weakness, a way in. Then finally, silence. I waited, counting my breaths until I reached 100. Then I slowly raised my eyes. The glass was empty. The hand was gone. But the wet streaks remained, glistening under the fluorescent light, slowly evaporating. I grabbed a rag from under the desk and wiped down the glass, my hands still trembling. The streaks smeared at first, then cleared, leaving no trace. I checked the monitors again. Nothing. Empty pavement, empty road. The radio crackled. Checkpoint 7, you okay? Your lights flickered on the monitor. I pressed the transmit button. I'm fine, just a power fluctuation. Copy that. Let us know if you need anything. I set the radio down and looked at the laminated sheet, at the rules that had kept me safe. The thing outside had sounded so real. The fear in that first voice, the desperation, it had felt genuine. And maybe in some way it was. Maybe the threat had learned to mimic human emotion so well that even it couldn't tell the difference anymore. But it had failed. It had asked me to confirm, to acknowledge, to open the door. And I had refused. I thought about what Santos had said. This job is about refusing to participate. That's all it was. Just the ability to say no over and over, even when every fiber of your being wanted to say yes, even when it sounded like a child screaming for help. I sat in the booth watching the empty road and tried to forget the sound of that voice. But I knew I wouldn't. Not ever. It happened just after 5 in the morning when the sky was still dark but starting to show the first hint of gray at the horizon. The radio crackled to life and I reached for it automatically. Checkpoint 7, this is dispatch, radio check. I pressed the transmit button. Checkpoint 7, copy, all clear here. Copy that. Quiet night? Quiet enough, I said. There was a pause and then I heard it, my own voice underneath the transmission, delayed by maybe half a second, echoing my words back to me. Checkpoint 7, copy. All clear here. I released the transmit button immediately, my blood going cold. The rule, if you hear a second radio transmission under your own voice, stop talking immediately. The radio continued crackling with static, but now there was something else underneath it. A voice. My voice. Checkpoint 7. My name is... It was saying my name. My full name. Not just the first name on my ID badge, but my middle name. The name my family used. The name that wasn't in any checkpoint file. I stared at the radio, not touching it, not responding. The voice continued, calm and measured, speaking in my exact cadence, my exact tone. I've been working here for 3 weeks now. I live at... My address. It was reciting my address, apartment number, and all. I have a scar on my left knee from when I was 7 years old. I fell off a bike. That was... that true. How could it know that? I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid no one will remember me. I felt my breath catch. That was something I'd never told anyone. A fear I barely admitted to myself. The voice kept going, listing facts and feelings, secrets and memories, pulling them out like files from a cabinet. And it was doing it in my voice. Perfect and undeniable. Then I saw the headlights. A vehicle was approaching, moving slowly. I switched my attention to the monitors, grateful for the distraction. A car rolled into view. Dark paint, no distinguishing features. It moved without sound, gliding across the pavement. And it stopped, exactly on the white line. My heart sank. The radio was still talking, still using my voice, now recounting a conversation I'd had with my mother last year, word for word. The car sat on the line, engine silent, headlights dimmed. The floodlight illuminated it clearly, but something about it looked off, like a photograph that had been slightly overexposed. I checked the timestamp on the monitor. It read 5:47 a.m. I glanced at my watch. It said 5:23 a.m. I looked back at the monitor. The timestamp had changed. Now it reads 5:51 a.m. The numbers were shifting, flickering, as if the camera couldn't decide what time it was recording. The intercom crackled. A voice came through, calm and polite, and I recognized it immediately. It was my voice. Can you confirm you see me? I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't touch any controls. I know you're there, my voice said from the speaker. I can see you watching. Just confirm you see me, that's all I need. One simple confirmation. The radio was still going, now talking about my childhood, About my first day of school, about the time I broke my arm and cried in front of everyone. The car's door opened. No one stepped out. The door just hung open, revealing darkness inside, the same impossible light-swallowing darkness I'd seen in the truck on my first night. "You're doing so well," my voice said from the intercom. "You've followed all the rules. You've been so careful, but you must be tired. You must want this to be over." I was tired, exhausted. Every muscle in my body ached from tension, from sitting rigid in this chair, from the constant vigilance. "Just say you see me, just say yes, then you can rest." The darkness inside the car began to move, rippling like water. Something was forming there, taking shape, pulling itself together from the shadows. The monitor's timestamp was spinning now, racing forward and backward, decades blurring past in seconds. "You know I'm real," my voice said, and there was something almost sad in it now. "You've known from the beginning. You saw the truck. You saw the hand on the glass. You know I'm here. Why won't you just admit it?" Because admitting it would make it true. Because confirming would be inviting. Because once I said yes, once I acknowledged what was in front of me, I would have permission to cross. I thought about Tyler whispering the date. I thought about the guard in the old files who forgot his spouse's name. I thought about Santos's warning. They need permission. The thing in the car was taking more definite shape now. Still shadow, but with form, with limbs, with something that might have been a face. "Say it," my voice commanded from the intercom, no longer polite. "Say you can see me. Confirm it." I looked down at the desk, at the laminated sheet, at the rules that had been written in someone else's blood, learned through someone else's mistakes. And I said nothing. The silence stretched, taut and terrible. Then the radio went dead. The intercom fell silent. The car's headlights flickered and went out. But the car was still there, still sitting on the white line. And the door was still open. And something was standing beside it now, fully formed, waiting in the darkness just beyond the reach of the floodlight, waiting to be seen, waiting to be confirmed, waiting for me to make the mistake. I kept my eyes on the laminated sheet, on the words printed there, and refused to look up. The thing outside could wait forever. So could I. The floodlights flickered once. I felt it more than saw it, a pulse in the air, a momentary dimming that made the darkness outside press closer. They flickered again. I kept my eyes on the desk, on the laminated sheet, my hands flat against the wood to keep them from shaking. The third flicker came, and with it, a high-pitched buzzing that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It vibrated in my teeth, in my skull, behind my eyes. The sound wasn't just audible. It was physical, like fingers pressing into my brain. I stared at the floor, following the rule, every instinct screaming at me to look up to see what was happening. The buzzing intensified. I could feel the booth trembling slightly, or maybe it was just me. The air felt thick, pressurized, like being underwater. Then I heard it. A click, the holding room door. I checked it at the start of my shift, like always. It had been locked. The deadbolt was turned. I'd tested it myself. But now I heard footsteps. Slow, measured, deliberate. The sound of boots on linoleum walking through the trailer with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where they were going. Coming toward the booth. I kept staring at the floor, at the scuff marks and stains, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The buzzing was still going, still vibrating through everything. The footsteps stopped just outside the booth door. I could hear breathing now. Slow and steady, perfectly timed, like a metronome. The door handle turned. It shouldn't have been able to. The booth door locked from the inside. I'd engaged it hours ago, but the handle turned anyway, metal grinding against metal. The door didn't open, not yet. But I could feel a presence on the other side, something waiting, testing, the boundary. I'm only trying to go where I belong. a voice said. It was soft, gentle, almost apologetic. It sounded like Santos. I nearly looked up. Santos was supposed to be safe, supposed to be one of the good ones, someone who understood this place. But Santos had left hours ago, and the rules said nothing about exceptions. The voice tried again, and this time it changed, morphing into something younger, lighter. Tyler's voice, laughing. Come on, man, this is ridiculous. It's just me. Open the door. This whole thing is a prank. Remember, we're messing with you. I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe it so badly. But Tyler couldn't laugh anymore. Tyler could barely remember his own name. The voice shifted again, becoming Carl's gravel-rough tone, angry now. Open this door right now. That's an order. You're in violation of about 6 different protocols. I'm writing you up for insubordination. My hands pressed harder against the desk. The laminated sheet was right in front of me, the words blurring slightly as my eyes watered from the strain of not blinking. The doorknob stopped turning. Then came a new sound. Soft, almost delicate, scraping. Something was tracing the bottom edge of the door, following the thin gap where the door met the frame. It sounded like a fingernail, but longer, harder, more deliberate. It moved slowly, methodically, as if mapping the entire perimeter, searching for the smallest weakness, the tiniest crack. The buzzing began to fade, dropping in pitch and volume. But I didn't move, not yet. The rules said to wait until it stopped completely. The scraping continued, patient and thorough, making its way around the door frame. Then it stopped. The buzzing cut out entirely. Silence fell like a weight. I waited, counting to 30 in my head, then slowly, so slowly, raised my eyes. The booth was empty except for me. The door was closed, locked from the inside just as I'd left it. The cameras showed the normal checkpoint, the floodlight illuminating the empty pavement. The car was gone from the white line. I stood on shaking legs and approached the door, looking down at the gap at the bottom. There were scratches in the metal frame. Long, deep gouges, fresh and bright against the old paint. They ran the entire perimeter of the door, precise and deliberate. Something had been here. Something had tried to find a way in. And it had failed. I checked the holding room. The door was closed, locked from the outside. When I opened it and looked inside, everything was exactly as it should be. Empty metal bench, flickering fluorescent light, nothing else. But I could smell something faint in the air. Something like ozone, like the aftermath of an electrical fire. I returned to the booth and sat down, my whole body trembling with exhaustion. The rules had worked, every single one of them. They'd kept me safe, kept the boundary intact, kept the threat on the other side, but I understood now what Santos had meant about this being a stalemate. The thing outside wasn't going away. It wasn't giving up. It had infinite patience, infinite time. It would keep testing, keep probing, keep waiting for someone to make a mistake. And eventually someone would. Maybe not tonight, maybe not this week, but eventually some guard would be too tired, too frightened, too human. They'd answer a question. They'd confirm a date. They'd open a door for someone who sounded scared. And that's when it would finally cross. I looked at the scratches on the doorframe, at the evidence of something trying to unmake the barrier between its world and mine. I thought about Tyler, about the guards in the old files, about everyone who'd stood in this booth and fought this quiet, invisible war. And I understood that we weren't winning. We were just holding the line, for as long as we could. Dawn came without ceremony, the way it always did out here. The sky lightened by degrees, gray fading to pale blue, the stars disappearing one by one. The floodlight shut off automatically at 6 a.m., its harsh white glare replaced by the softer light of early morning. Birds started calling from the pine forest. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the smell of sage from the scrubland. The road looked ordinary again, just cracked asphalt and faded paint, as if nothing unusual had ever happened here. Carl's truck appeared right on schedule, rolling up to the checkpoint at 6:15. He parked and walked to the booth carrying his battered coffee thermos, his face showing the same tired neutrality it always did. He stepped inside and looked at me for a long moment. "Did you answer the date?" he asked. "No." He nodded, his expression unchanging. "Good." He glanced around the booth, his eyes settling on the door frame, on the fresh scratches that hadn't been there yesterday. "Busy night," he observed. "Yeah." He didn't ask for details, he just pulled out his clipboard and started reviewing the logs, checking the entries I'd made, the vehicles I'd processed. "Tyler's being transferred," Carl said after a moment. "Medical leave. Psychological evaluation pending." "Is he going to be okay?" Carl was quiet for a moment. "They found him sitting in his patrol car this morning, parked outside his house. He was on the radio calling in his location, but he couldn't remember where he lived. He gave the dispatcher the date over and over instead of his address." He paused. "He'll recover mostly, but he's not coming back here." I thought about Tyler's confidence, his dismissal of the rules, his certainty that it was all just superstition. "How many guards have we lost?" I asked. "Lost?" Carl looked at me. "We don't lose people, not exactly, but we've had 19 transfers in the last 10 years, medical, psychological, personal reasons. Most of them last less than a month." He poured coffee from his thermos, the steam rising in the cool morning air. "You're the first one in a while who's made it past the first week. Why do you stay?" The question came out before I could stop it. Carl was quiet for a long time, staring out at the road, at the white line that marked the boundary. "Because someone has to," he finally said. "This checkpoint isn't going anywhere. What's on the other side isn't going away. If we abandon this post, if we let it go unmanned, it'll find another way through. Another place, another line." He looked at me. "At least here, we know the rules. We know how to hold it back." He handed me a piece of paper folded in half. "Santos asked me to give this to you, said you were ready for it." I unfolded the paper. It was another rule handwritten in Santos's careful script. "If it asks you to confirm anything, the date, the time, your name, what you see, what you hear, it is already at the door. Silence is the only answer." Below that, Santos had added a note. "You did well. The hard part is remembering that every night starts over. It never gets easier. You just get better at saying no." I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket. Carl finished his coffee and started his shift, settling into the chair I'd just vacated. "Get some rest. You look like hell." I drove home as the sun climbed higher, the landscape looking normal and familiar in the daylight. Traffic picked up as I hit the main highway, regular people heading to regular jobs, unaware of the quiet battle that had been fought in the darkness a few miles away. I made it to my apartment and collapsed onto the couch, too exhausted to even take off my boots. I tried to sleep, but my mind kept replaying the night. The car is on the white line, the hand on the glass, the footsteps in the trailer, the scratching at the door. My voice comes from the radio reciting my secrets. "Confirm you see me, that's all. Just confirm." I must have dozed eventually because I woke to darkness, my phone buzzing on the coffee table. I checked the time. 9:47 p.m. I'd slept through the entire day. The phone was ringing. The caller ID showed nothing. Just a blank line where the number should be. I stared at it, my hand hovering over the screen. It rang again, insistent. I picked it up but didn't answer, just held it to my ear, waiting. A voice came through, soft and familiar. "What day is it?" My own voice, asking me a question. I didn't answer. I just listened to the breathing on the other end, slow and patient. "I know you can hear me," the voice said. I know you're there. I just want to know what day it is. That's not so hard, is it? Just tell me the date." I hung up. The phone immediately rang again. I turned it off and sat in the darkness of my apartment, my heart pounding. Santos had been right. Once the checkpoint tried you, it remembered. It didn't stop just because your shift ended. It would follow you, test you in other places, other ways. A phone call, a voice in a crowd, a stranger asking an innocent question. I got up and went to my desk, pulling out a sheet of paper and a marker. I started writing. I wrote down every rule I'd learned, every warning I'd been given, every hard-won piece of knowledge that had kept me alive. I wrote them carefully, clearly, the way someone had done for me. When I finished, I took the paper to a copy shop that was still open and had it laminated. Back at home, I stared at the sheet, at the rules that looked like jokes but weren't. At the bottom, I added one final line in permanent marker. If it asks you to confirm anything, it is already at the door. I didn't sleep that night, or the next, but I went back to the checkpoint when my shift came around. Because Carl was right. Someone had to hold the line, someone had to keep saying no. And now that I understood what we were fighting, now that I'd seen what waited in the darkness, I couldn't walk away. I took my place in the booth, turned on the monitors, and checked the radio. The white line glowed under the floodlight, marking the boundary. And I waited for the vehicles that would stop exactly on it, for the voices that would ask me to confirm, for the patient, the infinite thing that would keep testing, keep probing, keep searching for the smallest crack in my resolve. I sat in the booth with my laminated sheet, with my rules written in other people's blood, and prepared to fight the same quiet battle that had been fought here for decades. The checkpoint never closed, the threat never slept. And neither would I, not anymore, not ever again. Because now I understood the truth that every guard before me had learned. This wasn't a job, it was a calling. And the only way to survive was to remember every single night that the most powerful word in the human language isn't yes, it's no. And I would keep saying it until dawn, every dawn, for as long as I could hold the line.